You got to have faith, a faith, a faith. You got to have faith, the faith, the faith.
6.5% was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round by round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust. This is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by CanucksHockeyBlog.com and a full press coverage network. I am Chris at Lightforce, joined virtually by Anna Forsyth at AForsyth03 and Matt Lee at MattLee_61, currently unfit to podcast and possibly an unrestricted free agent. Adam Ovenall Carter at AdamFOC. Welcome, the two of you. It's a long time no see.
Yeah, it's been ages. I missed you guys so much.
A whole week. Rumors are that Adam Ovenall Carter has also been signed by the Calgary Flames.
At this point, I would not doubt it.
See, how do you got signed by the Seattle Kraken?
Well, no, that's so. I think Matt's rumor is probably more accurate, but he doesn't have any form of NMC, so it's possible that left unprotected, he'll then be claimed by the Kraken. So look for the A1, Flames hockey podcast to kick off.
Yeah,
on a podcatcher near you.
It's okay. He's overpaid anyway.
Yeah, I mean, for our patrons that tuned into instead of the anthems, you're probably at this point, you're like, man, just leave Adam alone, because we just spent like close to 20 minutes picking on him.
Well, he is welcome to come back and defend himself.
This is true. And if you are not a patron of ours and weren't able to see instead of the anthems, but don't even know what it is now our pre-show. So before we record every main show, we are going to record a pre-show exclusive to C4 patrons. How do you gain access? You just need to support the podcast. I think the lowest denomination to support the podcast is $1 a month. And that'll get you access to, patron chat and Discord, which also gives you a nice role in Discord, gets you access to instead of the anthems on Patreon. And again, it's an exclusive live stream. So good value there. I
mean, it's $1, so it is like currently $1.31 Canadian, but hopefully you think we're worth that.
But
it's like the price of a special like iced coffee when Timmy's do their promotions.
I was going to say,
the size small though.
To Chris's point, though, the value is amazing. It's such good value that it makes the Tyler Toffoli contract with Montreal look like a overpaid contract.
This is the type of episode this one's going to be, right? We're going to constantly
a lot of sass.
Referring back to the events of the past week. So why not, tell our listeners what we're going to talk about this week, Matt?
Oh, I think we already know what we're going to talk about. It's 1 week of recaps into free agency. The Vancouver Canucks went into free agency with Chris Tanev, Jacob Markstrom, and Tyler Toffoli all becoming free agents. I think at least most of us thought that they'd have room to get at least one of them back. Maybe two if you're stretching it. But no, they ended up with none of them. So we got no Tanev, we got no Toffoli, we got no Markstrom. And just to give us another kick in the pants, we have no Troy Stecher as well. And no Louis Domingue, the most important one of them all.
Which, you know what? Of all the Calgary signings, that one hurt the most.
It was just like the final straw, right? It was just like, even Louis Domingue, we can't even have cookies now.
Yeah, they're gonna get all the good baked goods, and you know what baked goods are like in the room. You can't find that on the average NHL roster. So you know what? Let's waste no further time. Let's dive into Rewind. Anna, you shared something on C4 Twitter that I thought was quite prescient. How last week the three of us had said that it was possible that the Canucks could lose out on OEL and lose the three of their top UFAs in Markstrom, Toffoli, and Tanev, and possibly Stetcher. You tweeted that that was simply what we thought could happen, not instructions to Jim Benning to follow through on.
Yeah, that was like our worst fears, but could happen. And yeah, Jim took it a bit too literally.
I mean, as I said in C4 Discord, right, in Gate 16, the sky is falling. It's end of days. Oh my goodness. The Canucks, they're over. Sell the team. Hold the franchise. It's all done.
Start again.
Yeah. Rebuild the rebuild. You know, when I heard that Toffoli was likely going to hit the market, he had waited, he and his, agent had waited long enough. I didn't have a problem with that. Like, frankly, it was more of a, okay, OEL, gummed up the works. And I may have resigned myself to the fact that Toffoli would not remain a Vancouver Canuck. He was going to find another team. But as we're going to get into, while he did find another team, the numbers confuse me. In fact, there are a lot of numbers that confuse me. So where do we want to start? Do we want to start with maybe, that one, or do we want to start with the fact that we have a change in net, or do we want to even go back to sort of the draft where the Vancouver Canucks did not a whole lot because they had not a whole lot.
I mean, we can quickly cover the draft because it's just like not too much of a story. They had the first pick in the third round. It seems like pretty much all their picks sort of make sense. Like they did fine.
Right. Like, I mean, I'll say this. There seems to be a general consensus that the Canucks did very well with the picks that they did have going into the draft. I know a lot of people who liked the Yanni Yermo pick, which was the third round pick that they used in terms of defensemen that had the upside of a second round pick, but had somehow inexplicably fallen to the third round. It's a work in progress for Yanni Yermo. I think most of us wouldn't put him ahead of someone like Jack Rathbone or Brogan Rafferty or anything like that. He's probably somewhere in that Jet Wu tier in that he needs a few years to mature his game overseas. And then a lot still has to break right for him to even have a shot. And there's the possibility, the odds are probably stacked against him, in fact, that he might not pan out as an NHL player. But from a third round pick, I think you could do a lot worse than Yanni Yermo. And again, most people seem to like the pick for where he went.
Yeah, I think that seems to be a good pick with a lot of potential that could definitely project higher than where he went. So that makes sense. I think there's some confusion on the Jackson Coons pick, like whether that was the right pick at that time. But
yeah, that
again,
one seemed...
once you get quite deep, it's hard to say. But he wasn't that well known beyond his local.
Yeah, and it seemed to be the most questionable pick of the litter. In terms of a player who
puppies now.
Whatever, Anna. Gosh, always picking over every single word. Okay, the point is that there seemed to be the most, umbrage with that pick out of all of them. And, Kuntz is a player that's going off to play, I believe, at the University of North Dakota next year, which is the same program, of course, that Brock Besser went to. So you do know that there is a good history with Canuck players who have gone to NODAC. I can think of at least one former Canuck that also went to NODAC.
Yeah, I was going to say there was someone else, right? That also went there.
There is still a chance that his game takes shape. I mean, I don't think a lot of people thought much of the Aiden McDonough pick a couple years ago, but now here he is turning his career on a positive end of things. So there's still the possibility a lot can change.
Last year, Carson Folks, everyone's just like, why did he get drafted at all? And he seems to have really boosted stock. So.
One player that I really liked was the late round pick of Victor Pearson. I think I've read a lot of positive things. Admittedly, again, don't know much about him, but the more I read about him, as like a last round pick, that was a real swing for the fences type of pick. And I think, again, there's value in that. The Canucks only had 5 picks, I believe, going into the draft, and they extracted as much value as they could with the ones that they did have.
Yep.
The struggle the Vancouver Canucks had, though, was it was late round picks. Right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, once you start getting in the third round, specifically the fourth round, now you're You're hoping your amateur scouting department has seen something that no other team has seen or been able to identify to maximize value. So
yeah, I mean, the only thing going for them was that there was so much disagreement between like end of the first round right into the third that you could really pick up some value there. But beyond that, yeah, you just have to just like take the risk and make your choice.
Yeah. And then, as we sort of move on from the draft, you have players being qualified, and the Vancouver Canucks, out of all of their, pending restricted free agents, the one that we were curious about in Jake Virtanen, they qualified.
Mm-hmm.
The one that we thought they might walk on, but we were curious why they would, is Troy Stecher. So when they chose not to issue a qualifying offer to Troy Stecher, it was under the pretext that he has arbitration rights, and we feel that we might not be able to fit that result or provide him the deal in an amount that would make sense to the team. And arguably, you might suggest that even the qualifying offer itself would not fit within the context of the budget of the team. So I have to ask, if Troy Stecher you feel you can't afford because of arbitration, yet you qualify Jake Virtanen, who also equally was able to take the team to arbitration and will be, and frankly, has a good case considering the season he just had to maximize value. How do you fit Jake into the big picture outside of the thought being as well, we might be able to go and dish this for something else? Like, I'm not trying to get rid of Jake here. The logic that the team has provided for Stecher doesn't compute to me when it pertains to Virtanen.
Yeah, presumably that is the logic, that they think they can deal him for something. But yeah, it doesn't quite make sense when you join them together for me, because especially when you see the contract Troy signed, like that's a very affordable like contract, short term, and yeah, just seems it doesn't quite fit like value wise. Just like that's a really good value contract. And if we're gonna like, if the Tanev contract got too rich, which it seems to, like, why would you not shore up your D with a like economic pick that yeah, he was just so keen on staying. It just seems like they didn't do enough work there.
I mean, we can get into this a little bit later, but it does seem to me that there were multiple opportunities for the Canucks to bring back one, even both, of Troy Stecher and Chris Tanev, and it just seems on the surface, and we can't profess to know what's going on behind closed doors, but it does seem that management is keen on revamping the look of the blue line, that they want to go in a different direction from players that they've already had, which is fine, but we still haven't seen a hint of what that vision looks like at this point, and we're a week old into free agency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, and that list is getting shorter and shorter.
Like, we have been on the Troy from Richmond bandwagon for many years now. I mean, I'm not shy about talking about how much time I have for Troy Stecher. He's a player who is a bottom pairing defenseman who can spell off someone in the top four for a couple stretches. We saw it in the playoffs, and we saw it pretty successfully in the playoffs, that he was fine playing in a top four role when he was called upon. And this is a guy who is from Richmond, like we mentioned, signed with the Vancouver Canucks as a free agent that was undrafted, scratched and clawed his way to get onto this roster. Didn't have to spend much, if at all, time in Utica, if I recall correctly, and clearly wanted to be in Vancouver. And the dollars were there for the Canucks, and it sounds like they were off chasing Tyson Barrie, and he didn't want to lose the offer that was coming from Detroit, because you can't blame Troy Stecher. I mean, you're heading into a period of uncertainty. You got to take the contracts that are being presented to you. But the Canucks could have had Troy Stecher, and it just seemed like they weren't that interested in him.
Yeah, for me, just to reiterate on that. Like, I understand where Troy was coming from. It was too late in the day. He needed that contract. He wanted to take that contract. It was too long to wait. The contract he signed, why couldn't Canucks have signed that a while ago and said, like, it's not like it was a huge major piece and chunk of their money, like completely destroying their ability to sign Tanev, Toffoli, Markstrom. Like, I don't see how that completely changed the picture for them.
Well, Jim Benning had continued to say, well, we plan on circling back. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to circle back. We're going to circle back. If I'm a player, how long do I wait for? Because other teams aren't going to necessarily wait for me. Like, they'll express interest, then they might wait. But I'm not. You're Troy Stetcher. You're not, Taylor Hall or whomever, right? Like, you understand your role in the grand scheme. So I feel that the Vancouver Canucks, maybe to Matt's point, got tied up in going after a Tyson Barrie or an OEL, which is what, sort of, I think, gummed everything up, because that OEL money made the situation for the Canucks much different. And I will give credit to Jim for holding his ground, because, like, the report was that the Coyotes wanted Demko. Like, it's like, you're going to give us Demko and then the deal is good. And the Canucks are like, hell to the no. And I guess Armstrong thought that he could convince Benning to fold when the Canucks had all the leverage. So again, Jim, good on you for not doing stupid there. But
the time period from, I mean, let's forget all the stuff that came before. Even the time period from that OEL deal being pretty much done, and like Stetcher signing a deal in Detroit, just.
I agree. I mean, like, let's actually go through the three. Why don't we go through the three in sort of the order that they signed deals? So Markstrom was the first one. I'm not going to lie, as sad as I am to see Markstrom go, and specifically to Calgary, I don't see how the Canucks make that deal work.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I've been team Markstrom from the get-go, but I said, like, there's a limit. We cannot be signing him longer than 4 years. Even 4 years was pushing it. And we cannot be signing him to, like, money that doesn't make sense. And the contract he got, good for him, and I'm really pleased for him. Wish it wasn't Calgary, but Canucks cannot sign that deal.
And then he's getting paid, 6 over 6, and he's got a ironclad NMC. So this is a guy who is ultimately dictating where and what he will do for the next 6 years. The Flames have paid out to get him. Now, it could very well, over the course of those 6 years, pan out to be a phenomenal signing. But that's just too rich for a Vancouver Canucks team that has struggled in the past, where they have goaltenders signed to rich contracts that they can't do much about.
My contract sucks.
Yeah, Markstrom's contract's great. For a team
Markstrom.
To your point, Chris, like, yeah, I fully agree with you that, 6x6 is tough. It's funny because you look at the structure of that contract, 6x6 and a full no movement clause, and you think to yourself, like, I know a situation where the Canucks signed a Swedish guy for 6 years and $6 million, and he also got a no movement clause for some of his contract as well. How's that working out for Vancouver right now?
Yeah, and not great.
So, I mean, yeah, it's a resounding yes, I think, across all three of us, that Markstrom, at the contract he got, good on you for getting it. It's well-deserved. It's probably going to look fine for the first 3 years of the contract, but you get into the back half of that contract. He's 31 in January. He'll be 34 when it's halfway through. Typically years when a goaltender really starts to decline. You saw with New York, they bought out Henrik Lundqvist, and that's a player who was aging at the same type of rate that Markstrom is. And I'm not even going to try to put Markstrom in the same hemisphere as Henrik Lundqvist, one of the best goaltenders of all time. Like, it's a calculated gamble on Calgary's part that Markstrom can deliver within the first 3 years, and they can worry about it in the latter three.
Well, if there's one saving grace that Markstrom deal is it's not buyout proof. And you can see that Markstrom and his agent understood that there was the potential for that to occur because his signing bonuses occur in years 5 and 6. And those signing bonuses are essentially half of his actual AAV, 2.5. So just under that. So you can tell that they're like, okay, we think that may happen then. So, to that point, there's sort of an out for Calgary, short of saying, hey, Jacob, lift your NMC and we would like to trade you. It's just, that's such a rich deal. Anna, you mentioned 4 years. I don't even know if the Canucks could have done 4 years at 6 per.
Yeah.
And that's not saying
like I
that
said,
Richmond doesn't
pushing
deserve
it.
it. Yeah. So who did the Vancouver Canucks go in and replace Markstrom with? Well, the player that everyone figured would become a Vancouver Canuck if Markstrom left, Braden Holtby. Now, they signed Braden Holtby at a reasonable $4.3 million and for 2 years. So the term is perfect. I'm actually not too upset with the value. I know there are some in C4 Discord, and there are many in Canucks Twitter that look at that and they're like, well, wait a minute. Why? You're paying more for what is not perceived as an upgrade. We saw Holtby specifically last year had a tough year, but then consider his save percentage was actually still high. And that gives you an idea of the fact that even though he was letting in more goals, he was having to stop a metric ton of pucks. If there is something the Vancouver Canucks like, it's a goaltender who can stop a metric ton of pucks.
I was going to say, does that situation sound familiar?
But what's interesting is he does have a modified NTC that does not protect him from being claimed by the Kraken, and it's simply a 14 no-trade list. It's not an MCR, it's NTC. So it's like the 4 teams. What teams were you that you listed, Matt?
It's the 4-team no trade clause, which prevents him from being traded to Buffalo, Edmonton, Ottawa, and Detroit. I mean, he could have just gone out and say it, Braden. Like, you don't want to go to the armpits of the NHL.
Well, we'll probably talk about Buffalo a little bit in the F word. I don't know if Buffalo would necessarily be on that list anymore.
I was going to say, isn't that like Taylor Hall's future career path? Just
1-year deal. I don't know about that. We'll get into that in the F word. What are your thoughts on Holtby?
I mean, sorry, you go first, Anna.
Okay. I was just going to say, good from a perspective of solid, dependable goalie that can push Demko. I think that's really key, and make him earn that 1A spot. Like, they're both going to be pushing for that. You want someone that can handle more of a load than a typical backup. I think it's not like a done deal that Demko is going to get the lion's share of the starts. He's going to have to earn that. Good that there's no protection in there. I think, like we said before, I think you're banking on Demko, and that's who they're going to protect when it comes round to the expansion draft. It might be a little bit expensive, but honestly, I thought the Holtby in general was too expensive for the Canucks, so to see him come down at a somewhat reasonable number, I'm happy with that.
I honestly, this is the one and only win of the Vancouver Canucks offseason so far. It's not a resoundingly massive win for the Canucks, but it is a win nonetheless. This is a guy who 2 years ago won the Stanley Cup. It doesn't matter what kind of spin or negatives you want to put on it. The guy won the Stanley Cup, and he beat the Vegas Golden Knights to boot in the Stanley Cup final, a team who is probably going to be a constant thorn in the Canucks side for the next 5 to 10 years. Braden Holtby, he had a bad year last season. Sub 900 save percentage is not good. But like Chris mentioned right off the top of the Holtby discussion, this is a guy who was facing a metric ton of pucks on any given night. And I think there would be very few goaltenders that could deliver much better than Braden Holtby did in those circumstances. The other big reason why you like this is that I don't think Braden Holtby is an unsalvageable goaltender. This is a guy who I think Ian Clark has clearly identified I can help repair this guy and rebuild his statistics and his reputation around the league. Ian Clark is one of the best goaltending coaches in the league. I firmly believe in that. And he's as good as it comes when it comes to repairing the technical side of a goaltender. And I think that this is a situation where the Canucks can help Holtby bounce back a little bit and give some life to his career again.
And beyond the player on the ice, though, I mean, Holtby as a person is a phenomenal guy. Like, This is the type of player I would want to see the Vancouver Canucks have more of on their team. And that's not just they don't have good guys on their roster. It's just these are the players I love to have in an organization. And, while history speaks for itself, in the short period of time since signing that contract, he's already said that first thing he wanted to do was talk to Demko and say, hey, I'm here to help you grow. We're going to compete, and I expect nothing less from a pro, but he's already understanding that Demko is the future. And two, when asked about his number, being that Tanner Pearson's got it, he's like, that's fine. It's his number. My wife and family, we're going to talk about what number I'm going to wear. So, in the grand scheme of hierarchy, yes, Holtby's new to Pearson, but technically speaking, if push were to come to shove, Holtby should probably get the number or be able to buy it from Toffoli. And he's already saying, "No, man, I'm not. I'm coming in."
Yeah, it's sensitive subject. So I think, he's saying all the right things, and like you said, I think we have a lot of good guys in the dressing room in Vancouver, but he's an outspoken leader in the community, which I think is different. Like, for example, Alex Adler is a great mentor, but publicly he's very quiet. He's the lead by example guy. So it's great to have someone that's so socially conscious and motivated like Holtby.
Yeah. So I'm fine with it, and then the sound of the NHL, the Seattle podcast that we're keen to actually connect with down the road. They had actually commented the moment they saw the deal announced, here is a contract that's actually well suited for the Kraken to potentially find a starting goaltender. So that, I'm not suggesting I want to see Holtby only in a Vancouver Canucks jersey for 1 year. But even others are saying, like, hey, I think there's some synergy here. And then now this deal that people might be concerned about moves off when Demko potentially moves in to take over the number one spot. So there is that light at the sort of end of the tunnel in the crease here in Vancouver.
Yeah.
But that's about it, because the blue line is a complete tire fire. Well, I'm not going to say a complete tire fire, but someone's gone into that tire yard with gasoline and a match.
Well, Jim, it's kind of like one of those stores that you go into where you're like confident that it's a front for some kind of organization, and there's just like hardly anything on the shelf.
It's that Yeah, it's that convenience store down the street from me that, I kid you not, is still a convenience store, but I genuinely wonder how fresh that box of, Wheaties is, because it still has like the Miracle on Ice team on the box. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a place like that in Kits on the corner of 4th and McDonald. If anyone is a Kits resident or familiar, you'll know the place I mean. Like, that place was not a grocery store.
What are you talking about? They had a box of like Shreddies on the shelf and a couple apples that seemed to be okay.
Mm-hmm. But that's what it is.
Yeah, so we already know that Tanev's gone. We know that Stetcher's gone. So what does the Vancouver Canucks blue line look at the moment that we're recording right now? So you have Edler at $6 million. You have Tyler Myers at $6 million. You have Jordy Ben going in the final year as $2 million. You have Jack Rathbone, maybe. You have Quinn Hughes, obviously. And then we'd have to go down to, the minor system where Levy exists. Does Jet Wu find his way up? Maybe a Brogan Rafferty does. Like, I can't imagine GM Jim not bringing in a defenseman at this point. Like, you need a proven NHL veteran, someone that's reliable. But the fact that they lost Tanev to Calgary at 4 years at $4.5 million, that number is more than reasonable. I may not be as keen on the term, only because I have questions about Tanev's durability.
Yeah, this was the first season he played a full season.
No, and that's what I was going to say.
Wouldn't have been a full season if it went the distance. He's openly admitted he was injured at the end of this season.
The kicker about this, though, is Jim is asked, like, well, what about Tanev? He's like, well, we've made Tanev a real reasonable offer and we've agreed to sleep on it. And I kid you not, like 30 minutes later, Calgary's announcing they've signed Chris Tanev to a deal.
Well,
like,
it wasn't 30. It was, to be fair to Jim, it was like 4 or 5 hours later. But
okay, yeah. But the sleep on it, there was no sleeping. There was no
sleeping, correct.
Oh, man. So, Calgary has already, poached Markstrom out of the Canucks' hands. I'm not going to even say poached is maybe too strong because Markstrom, Canucks couldn't afford that. But to see them take Tanev at this point, it's like, whoa, like, you kidding me? And that number? If you had told me, hey, Chris, this is what it's going to cost for at 4.5, I would have said yes. I would not have liked the 4, but I would have said yes.
See, I don't know if I would have necessarily, but looking back on it, on the context of everything else, including letting go of Stetcher as well, it does make you nervous that you're just like, okay, but in the context of that, yeah, I probably would have, looking back. If you're going to let Stetcher go, if you're going to not sign OEL or replacement thereof, then yeah, maybe it is okay to sign that contract.
Well, would you have signed the deal with Tyson Barrie for 1 year at $3.75, I think?
I heard it was more than 5.
I just read this probably before we started the show, and yet I cannot bring it to mind. Someone double check that.
I'm looking on Cap Friendly right now, and it's 1 season, 3.75.
Oh, I know that's what he went for, but I had seen a tweet or two that the Canucks had offered more.
Oh yeah, the Canucks had offered more, and that's sort of what I'm getting at is that he signed at Edmonton for his reasons, especially if Vancouver offered him more. But that's where I start to wonder, like, I would have totally signed Barrie at the obviously discounted price. The Canucks had offered him more. So that's where now I'm wondering if...
thing. Like, if we, like, what to want, Tyson Barrie would have paid that amount for him.
Yeah, and
like,
so that's why...
The offer wasn't... Like, he wouldn't have signed for the Canucks at that rate. He wouldn't sign...
Well, he didn't sign a 5, so yeah, why would he sign the discount deal? I just... That's where I think, for me, Tanev at the 4-5... Like, I probably would have said yes. Like, if you had said, yeah, they're going to lose Markstrom, they're going to lose Toffoli, Stetcher's going to go. And I've been like, yeah, okay, that's fine. I can tolerate Tanev at that number. My worry was Tanev at a 6.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you think about, like, where Edler was in his last negotiation. Yeah, he was more durable than Tanev was and provided a more offensive role. But he was able to extract that much money out of the Vancouver Canucks in a shorter-term contract.
And especially given that bare bones defense that you listed out, how many of them are right-handers?
Oh gosh, is Rafferty right-handed?
Rafferty's right-handed.
Yeah, I think he's the only one of the bunch.
Yeah, and I thought Jordy Ben was right-handed, but I think he's just played on his offside.
So, Jet Wu is right-handed.
I mean, sure, but like he hasn't.
Come on down, go. Just skip past Utica and go right to the NHL. Troy Stetcher did it.
Yeah, what did he play 2 weeks?
We should get that Troy Stetcher guy. Is he available?
I love like how he played however long in Utica, like 2 weeks. Maybe it was more than that, but like very short amount of time. And he got the nickname Tony Stretcher from that short amount of time because that was his first pro game. He got announced as Tony Stretcher, and that's just stuck with him forever. That's unlucky, but...
Well, so Tanev's in Calgary, and then Troy Stetcher signs with the Red Wings 2 years at $1.7 million, which I don't know. Like,
surely he wasn't asking for more to stay in his hometown and play for the team he loves.
It wouldn't surprise me if Troy Stetcher would have signed for even less than that, even on a 1-year show-me contract. But again, like this goes back to my original point, is ultimately I think this came down to management wanting to give their blue line a different look. Like they said to themselves, like, we can't bring back the exact same blue line, so we're just going to let the exact same blue line go. So the management thinking is probably like, we would rather lose these guys to free agency than to bring them back at discounted prices
at
for
reasonable.
But the thing is, like the Canucks could have qualified him at less. I don't think he would. He have. I'd have to look this
his
up. I don't think he
qualifier
would
was
need
somewhere
a
around
raise.
$2.5 million,
Yeah, I was
and
gonna say,
so they were afraid he was going to get closer to $3 million in arbitration.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I just,
no, yeah. So I kind of can understand from that perspective why, but why not just say like, okay, this would be your qualifying. Let's like get you just under that. Like, let's go for like we'll pay you $2 million. He would have taken that, but like he's signing for 1.7. Like, of course, he would have taken like a reasonable offer. He might have taken a 1.5. Like,
the only thing I could think of that maybe the Canucks did provide him a 1.5 or maybe a 1.7. The role that he will play in Detroit, based on the Red Wings' current roster, will be an elevated role compared to what he would have had here in Vancouver.
you're right, but I don't know if that would have made enough of a difference. Like, he loves playing here.
Oh no, and I know, like I'm not knocking his love for the Canucks, and obviously, being a local kid and all. But if you're a player that's wanting to go and showcase yourself for that next deal, I don't know if Vancouver would have been the place for that to happen. It might have next year. Like next year, Edler's off the books. What's going to happen? Like,
Yeah,
are they going to bring him back?
You're playing for an exciting team. Like, don't get me wrong. If he took a cheap deal to sign for a better team than Vancouver, I'd be like, sure, like go ahead, like understand that. But he's signing for a very much developing team, like Detroit, to be kind.
And then the kicker of the day, Tyler Toffoli signs a deal with the Montreal Canadiens. Now, it was announced that he is exploring the market. At that point, that ship had sailed. I did not see the Vancouver Canucks getting that opportunity to bring him back to Vancouver. The announced deal, 4 years, $4.25 million. In fact, there are no signing bonuses. There is no change in salary. It is probably, as far as NHL contracts go, the most balanced approach to a player and a contract that we have seen in a while. The flexibility here, you technically wouldn't necessarily need to protect him if things weren't working out as well as you'd wanted. I would imagine a Seattle Kraken, would probably take him if you were, only 3 years left. 2, you could probably buy it out if it's not working out. 3, you could probably trade him. And I'm not suggesting long-term here. If you told me the Vancouver Canucks could have Toffoli at that price, I would have said sign now.
100%. We literally said on this podcast, when the rumors came out about Toffoli talking about 4 times 4.3 deal, we said, yeah, that sounds good. We just don't see it happening. We don't see.
Was it 4.3?
Yeah.
I could have sworn that there were rumors about 4.9 times 4 for the Canucks, and I was like, sign me up for that too.
Right. Like
he was making 4.6 after last season, so really
he took a pay cut.
Yes.
Either way, we said he's just not going to sign for that. But if he did, yes, sign that. But I saw him, like, it's weird because I saw him walking away. Like, I've seen that for a long time. I've prepared for that. You just didn't see him walking away and signing for that contract. We actually also going to Montreal, so farther away from all his roots.
There's a positive that he's going to Montreal for me. I
said
it on Twitter.
A Western Conference team.
I said it on TikTok.
Sure.
At least it's not to Calgary.
It's not to Calgary. And I don't hate the Habs. I genuinely don't. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're going to get into a half full, half empty in a moment. I think Matt's onto something. We've talked a little bit about it in Gate 16 as to what might be going on in Vancouver, because we're starting to see some of these numbers and we're like, wait a minute. How is that a questionable figure? How is it that the Canucks weren't in on the mix? And again, maybe they were, but I think there's more to this story. The final thing, Louis Domingue, as we already said, he's signing Calgary, and in the rundown, and it's not news on Twitter, Finn's being lured by the Calgary Flames to be their new mascot.
I'm not ready to talk about mascots. And mascots
Harvey, I'll just say this: Harvey the Hound is getting up there in Calgary. They might need a new replacement.
Well, how many tongues has that that dog gone through at this
Yeah,
point, right?
so, I mean,
just at least turn it off once. So.
they could definitely place Harvey the Hound on waivers for the purpose of a buyout and have the cap space needed to bring Finn in.
Well, but the thing
You're
is
not
about
taking
Finn, and I mean this, we're gonna turn into a little bit, C4MZ here. But as Roberto Luongo once reported, Finn's got a sex addiction, and that might explain why every season there are a ton of mini Finns running around.
Let's not. I can't deal with the weird, Edmonton Oilers sexy mascot, stop sexualizing animals. It's not okay.
You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Press Coverage Network.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on that.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? Because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He didn't play. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
What a transition into half full, half empty. Let me tell you. So let's actually talk about what is left. Is there anything worthwhile for the Vancouver Canucks to go and sign a contract with? Or is this maybe now just time to say 2021 is a mail-it-in year?
I mean, possibly
I think
both.
you're right. I mean, Jeff Patterson tweeted about it earlier this morning on Monday and said, you know what? You could fault Jim Benning for not making a stronger effort to bring back his free agents. But if you want to look at this from a different perspective, and if you want to look at it from a glass half full perspective, it's that it's quite possible the 2020-2021 season is going to be a compressed, smaller season, possibly in a bubble once again. And it's just, maybe it's a year that you're not really looking to field a super competitive team at the expense of sacrificing long-term competitive windows. By not signing Markstrom to a 6x6 and Tanev to a 4.5x4 and Toffoli even to a 4-year deal, the Canucks will be going into 2021's free agency period with a lot more flexibility, even after they sign Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes to the mega contracts that they are likely going to command. I would rather have 1 year of a bump in the road in order to have 5 to 10 years of a prolonged, super competitive window. It sucks to take a bit of a step back, but sometimes improvement isn't always a linear thing.
Well, friend of the show, Sat Shaw, has reported both last week and then again on social media today that the Canucks are working within an internal cap. And it's one of the reasons why you look at the Holtby deal, and that is a cash fluid contract. He is paid less money his first year, more on the second. And that might be where the Vancouver Canucks are planning for the opportunity to not have to pay that second year because someone else will do it for them. I've also heard from a number of sources that I trust who are a lot closer to, the Vancouver Canucks war room than most, who have said something similar. There is a new funding formula in place is the best way to position it. So if that is actually the case, what would have put that into motion? Well, we've seen in the past the Vancouver Canucks have become a cash-poor team anytime there's been an NHL work stoppage, at least while the family has been in charge. There is currently no gate revenue to be had. Matt, you pointed out, next season will be short. It's possible to be in a bubble, something you as well had said, Anna. So if you're the family who's also had a reputation of becoming much more tight with the belt when the money starts to dry up, this is another season where you're going to probably tighten the belt. The difference is in a work stoppage, you're not having to pay your players. And in this situation, you still have to. And from what I understand, it's not prorated. Like Alex Edler, he's getting $6 million next year, whether they play a 48-game season or an 82-game season. So you're actually getting less value. And if you're going to a bubble, paying probably more in logistical costs to put your team there. So I think we'll either see bargain basement Jags on like 1 or 2 year deals, or this push to just let's play kids. It'll be like a tryout season.
I think it's going to be a bit of a combination of the two. I mean, we've seen Benning talk up guys like Ulevi, Rafferty, and Rathbone already. He's mentioned Hoglander in passing as well. I think it's entirely possible you see a combination of all 4 of those prospects take the leap. I don't think that it's going to the point where we're back to signing Jason Megna and Michael Chaput on this team, though.
Well, Megna's signed. So.
Yeah, Megna's already gone anyway.
To Calgary, I assume, by the way. Honestly, I don't think they're going to sign Jags. They're probably going to scrape the bottom of the bargain bin to try and scrounge up some players on cap-friendly deals for sure. But I don't think that they're going to just try and fill this team with, AHL quality players. Also, now that you're starting to see some more movement happening on the free agency front and more teams taking on the money that they were supposed to take right at the beginning of free agency, you're seeing teams bumping up against the salary cap. So maybe there's that narrow window where the Canucks can take advantage of teams and take on both a bad contract and a player that helps them right now, and possibly at bargain trade prices.
You're not wrong about progress not being linear. I guess it's just frustrating when management are telling us, like, for the last couple of years that this is our time to push, and you sign deals like JT Miller, which I'm not arguing with the value of that. But like people like JT Miller and Toffoli are like ambitious deals. And then it's just like, oh, never mind. Like, we're back to sucking. And especially from the defense point of view, it just seemed like Canucks maybe like had the opportunity to revamp it in a smart way and they like all they've done is just they've kept the bad contracts and got rid of the good ones.
Well, in fairness, keeping the bad contracts,
I mean, you can't do anything about that. Like,
yeah, like that's
no one wants to take Tyler Myers, presumably. But yeah, that's just. It's not like the Canucks are free now. Like, they still have Louis Eriksson. They still have like the Brandon Sutter contract. They still have Sven Berchi's contract. They still have the Luongo Capri catcher. That's not their fault. Like, don't get me wrong. The Ryan Spooner buyout. There's just all this dead money on the books. I guess Brandon Sutter is not dead money, but
well, so JJ, yeah, like JJ Guerrero, blog father, guy who started up Canucks Hockey Blog. He tweeted on October 6th. He listed off a series of contracts: Eriksson, $6 million, modified no trade; Sutter, 4.375, modified no trade; Ferland, Berchi, Roussel, Beagle, Myers, Ben, Spooner. So he's listing all these deals sort of down. And he's like, imagine having $32 million plus to add PD Hughes, Bo, Bess, Millsy. So that's what you have for those 5. And here are all the players that have tied that up. He then retweets that today. Apparently the pandemic made Jim Benning make those deals. And I think that's the problem, is Jim has had a hell of a time when it comes to his pro scouting or his ability to find contracts. Like, I would give him a pass on a Myers, because Myers would have been able to acquire that. But you like it.
Yeah, because I think we've talked about this. I don't remember if we talked about it last week or just on Discord, but the pandemic, like no one could have foreseen the pandemic, and it made a tough situation tougher. But a lot of teams had the ability to be flexible and react to the pandemic because they didn't tie up those bad deals.
It's one of those teams, the Colorado Avalanche.
They are so deep, it's terrifying. Like, considering they just signed this morning, right? Devin Taves out of
Well, it was a trade.
Oh, it
Two
was
second-round picks.
it was 2 second-round picks for Devin Taves, but
And people are like, well, that's a steep price. And you're thinking, but they have a metric ton of caps. Like, if I was in the position that the Avs were, trading picks doesn't concern you as much because you have flexibility to take a bad contract to get those back. Then you have the Vancouver Canucks who don't have the pick. Well, they now do, but didn't. And then in turn had this inability to move the bad contracts they had. Like, I think I'd like the reverse situation, but somehow keep, PD Hughes and Demko and all of them in the fold. As far as replacement, we're going to talk about replacements. Who could the Vancouver Canucks sign to help shore up the blue line? For instance, I was going to say Pietrangelo is still available.
Well,
No, he's not.
As of 5 minutes ago, yeah, he's not.
And he signed for a number that is just a little bit rich for the Vancouver Canucks. 7 years at 8.8. Now, hopefully Vegas hit the jackpot when they were on the casino floor, because that is a rich contract. In fact, what does that do for Vegas and the cap?
I'm glad you asked, Chris, because I have it right here on my phone. The Las Vegas Golden Knights have about $88.4 million in contracts in 22 players, which puts them about $6.9 million over the salary cap at this point in time. And that's not even with the full roster.
Oh, so who? Oh, man.
Obviously, if you're the Vancouver Canucks, you're calling up George McPhee and saying, hey, we will take that Shea Theodore scrub off your hands for free. You are welcome. He's not very good. We'll take that BC-born guy home.
Do you think Jim has it in him to do what Gillis did to San Jose? Like, take advantage of a cap situation to extract a player for diddly squish?
When did we do that to San Jose?
Sorry. You do not remember the key defenseman that made 2011 happen?
Oh, Christian Ehrhoff. Right. Sorry. It's been a while.
But the Vancouver, Gillis was able to extract a solid player, at least in a Canucks uniform.
Yeah, that's a weird one though, Christian Ehrhoff, hey?
Well, I mean, he goes on to get paid in Buffalo, and at least he got paid. But the struggle is that do you have faith that Jim could do that? Like,
once again, I don't, but I have no option but to believe in him. Go, Jim! Go fleece the ultimate golden fleeces, the Golden Knights.
So in the words of George Michael, you gotta have faith, the faith, the faith.
No one needed you to sing that.
You gotta have faith, the faith, the faith.
But
Gillis was here, he could do it. Fault him for everything else, but I always trusted in Gillis to work magic, even though other teams didn't trust him.
But yeah, good. You don't want other teams to trust your GM. That's a good position to be in.
Oh, so what do the Canucks do? Like, is there a player or players to be had that the Vancouver Canucks should maybe target that are still available in free agency? Hamonic?
Yeah, Travis Hamonic, Sami Vatanen. Those are a couple players that I think I've seen floated around. I know Rick Dhaliwal mentioned Michael Stone as another possible cheap option that the Canucks could pursue. These are still NHL players, and Travis Hamonic is a guy who does have a bit of a checkered injury history for sure, but when healthy has been a safe and dependable right side defenseman. If you're looking for a Chris Tanev replacement, none better than a guy who's got an injury history like Travis Hamonic. So, I think it's possible.
He's pretty much Chris Tanev light, no?
Well, I was going to suggest maybe an older defenseman on a shorter term, like Trevor Daley.
Is he still playing in the NHL?
Well, but that's what I'm sort of thinking is that you get him on like a Ben style contract. You're moving towards this youth movement. It gives you some flexibility to. I could have said, was it Hainsey who I think is also
okay? He honestly he sounds like he's from the 70s. That name is just like something you hear on Heritage Minutes or something. But yeah,
the hinterland who's who.
Ron Hainsey, by the way, is even older than Trevor Daley. He's 39.
Yeah, and I was going to say, he belongs to that era in more than ways than one.
Hey, the Canucks brought in Weinrich when he was like 108 with his yellow visor, so it's been done.
I think the Canucks are not looking to pursue older players like that, and when they can get cheaper options. I was going to say that, it's going to take some time. I think Jim Benning even admitted that this is a period that could take weeks for free agency. You saw Hall and Pietrangelo now, they've got their money, but it took a while for them to also get their money, and Hall didn't even get the term that he probably would have liked in a normal open market. So, there's not a whole lot left, but there's still a good handful of quality players that are out there that are waiting for a deal that they've suddenly realized that the market isn't as much of a buyer's market as they anticipated it being. So I think it's important that Jim try not to look too desperate, but there is the possibility he can still get some players, replacement level players, at bargain price deals and without committing the term.
Yes, I think they're going to have to, especially from a pure standpoint of filling out the roster. Like we've talked about, if Tanev re-signed, Canucks were if they re-signed at least two of the three of the big three, or even one, that they would have to depend on a Utica player making the jump next year in order to fill out that bottom pairing. But it has to be at least one, you would say.
Well, now it's almost like a sure thing. There'll be a Utica player.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if they make the jump or not. They're gonna.
Yeah. I guess I'm, thinking back to it. There is a market for deals where Jim could turn things around, and maybe that wasn't the plan. Maybe it's something he might be able to pull off. Like you're right, having that faith that he could take advantage of a team in a tough spot like the Golden Knights are. Yeah, I don't know. The sky is falling. Fold the franchise. Let's all become Kraken fans. End of days. Negative. Rawr.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't want to be negative. I actually felt quite good, pre-free agency. And just thought, oh.
You know what? And that's the thing is, I think collectively, and so, Clay Who, as we know him, commented that Canucks Twitter has gone back to its sort of normal ways. The reason I think Canucks Twitter was in this place of, outside of the fact everyone's sort of united with the way the team performed in the bubble, was that Benning was in this position where he could win by not getting OEL, win by bringing back one of the three. Like everyone had sort of come to the conclusion one of the big three was going to return. Yeah, they didn't all agree on who it should be in the priority, so there would have been some anger about that. But I don't think anyone really envisioned this world. And as much as we entertained the thought that it might be possible the last episode, honestly, did either one of you think the Vancouver Canucks would be in a position where we're recording this episode, that Markstrom, Tanev, Toffoli are gone, and Stetcher's gone? Add in number
and Deming.
And table flipping right there, right?
The final straw, as it were.
Well,
that's the thing is I don't think anyone really envisioned this. Even those who might have been already upset with the Canucks, they might have said it, but they didn't. They were like, "Oh yeah, it's totally going to happen." I know it won't, but yeah, it's totally going to happen. And now they're like, "Oh, I told you it was going to happen."
Yeah.
Oh, I just don't know.
What I want to say is I feel no joy about being right about losing all three free agents. I feel no joy when I tweeted what I tweeted using Rick Dollywald's tweets, where we started talking about why Vancouver is such an exciting place to play for OEL and what such an appealing place to play. And now we're #circleback season on Oscar Fantenberg. That's not the Swedish I was looking for, but
I mean, the positive to take is at least this young core still exists in Vancouver, and maybe
that's not possible for them to F up yet.
Well, no, but that's the thing is that if we next year is going to be a crazy year. Doesn't matter whether the Canucks went and knocked out of the park in free agency. Next year's a crazy year. It's a crazy year. So maybe take this year as it is, and we start looking at sort of the next year and what that might mean and how the Vancouver Canucks are going to be able to go and make magic work. I mean, they're not in a better position when you think about the roster. Like, oh, yay, Edler, $6 million is no longer on the books. Oh, darn it, we don't have NHL caliber defensemen to fill in the top line. Maybe Quinn Hughes if his progression continues. But like I think that's where we as a Canucks fan need to start to look ahead to. Is that this is a team that probably maybe overachieved this past season due to the pandemic and then did really well. They're still probably going to be in that space. And then in 21-22, that's when things take off. I don't know. Why don't we take ourselves another short break here? You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on the Full Press Coverage Network and CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
He liked to say the F word.
Oh, then get the here then. Okay, see ya.
Is going to have the F word on it.
I wish I could give you an explanation about it. I can't. You, out of here.
You said the F word, Dad.
You called me the F word.
We've already kind of been doing it throughout this episode just because the Canucks had their fingers in on so many different potential deals that have gone sideways and had these players sign with other teams. We already talked about Taylor Hall. The Taylor Hall sweepstakes came down to him signing a 1-year deal in Buffalo. The only thing I can think about this deal, he wanted $8 million, and he knew this next year would be crazy, and therefore he decided to take 1 year. Like, I don't get this 1-year deal in Buffalo.
I don't.
Like, what does Buffalo have going for it outside the fact that maybe they wanted a chance to win the first round pick and know that Taylor Hall's the guy to get it done?
I really don't understand from the perspective of. I guess it's less of a risk from Taylor Hall's point of view. Like, you don't want to be stuck in Buffalo. If they continue to bottom out, from Buffalo's point of view, it's definitely worth it to keep Jack Eichel around and interested. But yeah, you've just got to hope from Taylor Hall's perspective that the market gets a lot better and that Buffalo don't Buffalo him in the meantime. Like the Buffalo stench, you know what I'm saying. But like, imagine being Taylor Hall, one of the best players in the entire league, and the places you've played are Edmonton, New Jersey, Phoenix, not even Phoenix, like Arizona, Desert, and Buffalo.
Wow, that's like 3 of the teams that were on Braden Holtby's no trade list.
Exactly. That is exactly what I said. It's just like the worst places to live. But
all
like,
of our Buffalo listeners right now are just like unsubscribing.
Yeah,
to
sorry,
the
but
good
not
wings,
ideal
though.
places to live. And teams that were going nowhere fast.
It has to be the $8 million. It has to be, right?
Yeah.
Like I
mean, that was what it would cost, like, for me to want to live in Buffalo too.
No, but like, I can't imagine.
Sorry.
Like this is the thing I don't get. Like, Hall must have received good offers from other teams.
Yeah, longer term, surely.
Right? Yeah,
but
it might not have been the 8, but I would imagine he was in the 7s, right?
And you would think, but maybe he's just wants to, as you said, like he's not wanting to commit to anywhere in this market, and especially if he doesn't know what it's going to look like. I mean, if we all can't go outside next year and playing in some sort of bubble, it doesn't matter where you play, right?
True.
But yeah, it's just, I'm not going to say poor millionaire, but it's crazy that in some ways we've never really seen the best from this crazy talent because of the teams he's played in. Oh well. But yeah, obviously, as we've recorded, Pietrangelo has signed in Vegas.
Like, big money.
Yeah,
There's
I mean,
teams
Stanley
should be talking to about a trade,
captain.
though.
Yeah, as we said.
Well, problem is, I think there are a lot of teams talking to Vegas about a trade right now. And there are teams who are in a position where they can go and extract max value. Like I was actually going to mention, Taylor Hall brings Buffalo above the floor. Buffalo's still got room to grow. So theoretically, if Buffalo wanted to dance, they could go forth and have a little fun. You've got the Senators, who are still below the floor. They've got a ton of room to dance with. You've got the Rangers with room to dance. You've got...
Did any of these teams want a $6 million Swedish player?
Probably not from the Canucks.
I mean, we have a couple, but we're not getting...
No, but like, that's the thing, right? Like, and I think these teams that have the room, and they like, for the Vancouver Canucks to dance, we can't, like, functionally, the Vancouver Canucks can't take bad from Vegas. Vegas is want to get, if they're going to give you good, they're wanting to give you bad with it, right? So, or pull something out of you like picks or prospects that don't hurt the cap too significantly. I don't think the Vancouver Canucks are in that position to go and solve all of the Golden Knights' problems unless somehow
that's the problem
Erickson
for me.
Suddenly wants to play there, and I don't know.
That's the problem for me, is that Vegas in a position where they really need to offload money, but like, how do Canucks take on?
Well, this goes back to what we've talked about the last couple of weeks. I mean, arguably the Vancouver Canucks have about $8 million in room right now. They still need to fill holes, obviously, so that's going to drop. But then you have, Michael Furlan's deal at 3.5 that may or may not be there. So I don't know.
They're screwed.
Vegas or the Canucks?
Both.
Or both?
Both. No.
But at least one of them is closer to winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, it's true. Until they get Demco'd. Maybe Demko is in their minds for eternity now.
I saw a great meme about how the Canucks now have Demko and Holtby. Two goalies who have beaten Vegas. Holtby, Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
They're on the same team now.
The thing with Vegas, though, is that they've always been greater than the sum of their parts, and the way they extracted value from quote-unquote, unfashionable or, forgotten players. So I have no doubt that they can push out, some contracts, take on some cheaper ones, and still be fine.
Yeah, but I don't know if Vegas, the point that you raised about being able to go and take players who've sort of fallen out of favor and then maximize value with, they're now in the place where those players have gotten to the point where maybe the value is no longer is a declining return, and you're getting so much money tied up in Peter Angelo. He's obviously, as a player in the here and the now, is worth that much money, but for the length of this term that he has since signed,
is it 7 or 8? Sorry,
it's 8. 7. He'll be 38 when his deal is over.
That's 8. I thought, well, isn't 8 the?
Sorry. No, you're right. It's 7. He'll be 38 though when the deal is over.
8.8. Yeah, that's 7.
Yeah, because St. Louis could have signed him to the 8 had they been able to do that, but they did not. And St. Louis could have worked this out well if they had signed that extra year and then looked to dish him off with a willing partner like Vegas. But anyhow.
Yeah, Vegas could be in trouble in a few years' time, and they're going to be in trouble, they'll need help, as we said, but are Canucks the team to, put them over a barrel? Sorry, that's a horrible expression. I don't like that.
They do not.
But it's probably not, because they don't have the, space.
Yeah. It's worth a phone call.
Oh, sure. And
but
as you say, Canucks still need to fill out the roster. So if there's value to be had taking one of Vegas D off their hands, then sure.
Mm-hmm. Chicago's in an interesting spot. They're talking about rebuild, and Captain Sirius is not taking too kind to that suggestion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Chicago...
I know Matt's already suggested the Canucks take Kane and Taves off their hands to
zero
make it easy.
interest in Patrick Kane at whatever contract. Zero. That would, like, honestly, if that happened, it would completely disengage me as a fan.
Well, first and foremost, there ain't no way that the Canucks could take one
Good.
of either of them.
No, I
They're
know.
at 10.5
Like, it's...
per. But
I know.
Yeah. I know Patrick Kane, but Holtby hasn't gotten you enough credit to then, completely exhaust that with a person like Patrick Kane.
No. No. But yeah, I think Chicago have been in a rough spot for a while. And they're one of those teams that just, like, were not ready to accept that their era was over and that they weren't a big team anymore. But maybe they're finally waking up to that.
Well, they're kind of where Detroit is now. Like, they're trending that direction. Like, Detroit was so good for so long because their amateur scouting system was a weapon unto itself. They continued to identify some of the best prospects in the late rounds of the draft for as long as forever, and then were able to get these players to sign very reasonable deals. The problem is that as these players became older, the team seemed to fail to grasp that their amateur scouting department wasn't as good as or effective as it once was, and things fall apart. Detroit's now where they are. Chicago was in a similar position. They were bad for a very long time until they became really good. And then they were in this weird spot where they couldn't afford to keep all their star players, but that's okay because they had young stars to fill in and they could trade for picks. And then same thing caught up. And then you have a team like the Vancouver Canucks, the one that we cheer for.
Yeah. I mean, when I became a hockey fan, like, the biggest names in the league were definitely, like, Kane, Taves, and Ovi, and Crosby. And who's still, like, top of his game star out of those? Ovi?
Yeah, I'd say Patrick Kane is still pretty good.
He's still good, but he's not a star anymore. He's not, like, league star, I would say. Like, I'd say if you had to pick another, like, 4 names now, be like McKinnon, McDavid, Ovi, Draisaitl.
Yeah, I'd say, like, Edmonton's got 2 right there. Like, Chicago used to have the 2. Now they have barely the 1.
Anyways.
Yeah. Oh, well. I mean, if there's one saving grace, the Vancouver Canucks are not the only team that are somewhat losing out.
That's a sad thing to be thankful for. Is that what we're deciding as, like, that's what we're thankful for?
That the Canucks are not the only team losing?
Yeah.
Sure.
See, that doesn't comfort me at all. The fact that there are a lot of managers, general managers in a tight spot that didn't prepare adequately for, given and be able to adapt to the flat cap. I agree that, like, this pandemic hit quite a few people hard, and even the teams in a good spot had to move around and figure some stuff out. But yeah.
Whether or not the Vancouver Canucks would have executed on this, had the memorandum of understanding included one amnesty buyout, I think that would have solved most teams' problems. Now, why you think I might suggest Vancouver does not execute on an amnesty buyout, it's because you're asking your owner to pay for a player to go away and then subsequently pay for the replacement. If the Vancouver Canucks are in a cash crunch, that's not something an owner maybe is keen to do this season. But I do truly wonder if that would have been an opportunity for teams to help themselves, but also I think from a player's perspective, I kind of wonder if, yes, some players got their contracts bought out and may ultimately not get as much money, but then it opens up free agency. Like right now, the players are seeing a depressed free agent market because too many teams can't afford their services.
And can I say one team that is frustratingly cash rich would be the Colorado Avalanche, because I know who their owners are because they're a current Arsenal ownership. Not that they give 2 S's about, like, spending money on Arsenal, because apparently you can't even afford to pay for a mascot salary, but they do spend money on their US team, so I'm sure they would have been fine with buyouts, the Cronkies, but
that's saying I don't think Colorado. If Colorado were to use a buyout, they'd have probably used a buyout where Joe Sakic made a phone call to a GM, extracted max value, took advantage of their tough situation, bought the player out, and then turned around with whatever picks or players they got to maximum. Like Joe Sakic, if there is a former player turned executive, give me a name of someone else who has been more successful than he has. Like, yes, he walked into Colorado in some respect, but he has been able to continue that run.
Oh yeah, like he's
artfully
one of those players that definitely got his opportunity handed to him on a plate, but he's really just made the most of it. Also, I didn't realize how handsome he was back in the day.
All right,
Burnaby Joe. I could have told you that.
Sorry, like I never saw him as a player. I was I just googled him just now to find out when he like his contract, like when he became the GM, to double check, and then I was like, holy smokes. Yeah, what a smoke show.
But that's the thing. But look at him at how he's aging, though, right? He looks very distinguished and like
he is Colorado's version of Mikel Arteta. Like
I know the name. I can't say I've seen.
He's the current Arsenal manager, but yeah.
But I look at Burnaby Joe and I'm like, I wish I could have aged like he has.
Yep.
We're about the same age-ish.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
You guys look the same too.
Actually, I think he is a little bit older than I am, but generationally.
He is older than you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anywho. Oh man, it's been a long episode.
Yeah.
Looking at the clock counting here.
Sorry.
Long episode.
I'll stop like perving on Joe Sakic, but from back in the day.
The listeners should see the look on Matt's face right now. Like it's just been progressively just.
He's thinking about his Brussels sprouts.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
currently
fair.
Baking.
Should we go and say one thing we're thankful for and tie it up?
Yes, let's. What is one thing you are thankful for, Anna?
Quinn Hughes and his ELC.
Matt?
Elias Pettersson and his ELC.
Oh.
Sorry, Chris, you don't get anything else.
I don't.
You get Louis Eriksson.
Oh, yeah.
You can be...
No, so I wasn't actually going to say Pettersson and the ELC because I wanted to be a little bit unique. I was going to say Pettersson and his, fab social media stylings. I don't know if you guys saw the video of him playing in net, doing the whole like round the world glove hand save. Like he looked like he could be a goaltender in a professional league. I'm not going to say NHL, but like the bits I saw, it's like, what can this kid not do?
Yeah, it's impressive. Hey, like the ex-Arsenal goaltender Petr was also the third choice goalie for Guildford something, whatever they are called, but like a hockey team back in England as well. I don't know how he was allowed to do that, but
yeah, I know
apparently
the
transferable
days of,
skill.
Players, double professional league players are gone. But if there was a player on the Canucks roster that could do it, would be Pettersson.
You know how we're always just like Viega would have played in goal if you asked him to? Yeah. Maybe we should switch out to say like put PD in goal.
Hey, PD would probably do it.
You don't need e-bugs when you've got PD around.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what am I thankful for? I'm thankful for our listeners. Because
so soppy.
No, because no matter how bad the Canucks situation might be, I want to click record because of the community you have around C4 and the listeners that tune in each and every week. That's what gets me through this.
Yeah. And there's a lot more to come. Free agents who rumbles on. Canucks need some more players. So let's see what deals there are to be made.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of what may come, next week's episode already in the can. So technically speaking, We get the week off. But I sit down with a couple of friends who host another podcast, absolutely not hockey related whatsoever. But you may have heard me reference this podcast before. It is Dark Poutine, which is a Canadian true crime podcast. I sit down with Mike Brown and Scott Hemingway, and we talk sort of, Canucks over the years. One, they're my age, so you can rest assured we go straight into like the 80s, into the 90s. We go full retro. We're going to talk about the current roster as well. We'll talk a little bit about stories we have around the Vancouver Canucks. We decide which mustache we wish we could have grown and who had the best mustache of all time in a Vancouver roster. There are some good ones. So as you can imagine, it's a phenomenal episode that Matt's glad he's not part of.
Yeah, I mean, Matt's a baby, right? You don't remember the 80s.
Matt, do you even remember the 94 run?
I remember the players involved, yep.
Okay. But is that because you read about it afterwards?
Yeah.
Or?
Were you aware at the time?
I remember seeing some of the first round series against Calgary and then watching the portions of the 94 final at my uncle's house.
I mean, I like to say that I'm not even sure I was aware of Canada in 94. Never mind hockey.
Good colonial overload you were.
I was 3.
No, but that's the thing. I poke fun at it, but I mean, let's be honest. I'm old.
Yeah, we know this.
I've been around. So no, I sit down with Mike and Scott. We chat a little bit about Canucks hockey. So next week there won't be any news. So if the Vancouver Canucks do crazy stuff, we may record something special just to obviously get onto it.
But you know what? That will be discussed, Chris.
What is that?
It will be discussed in Discord.
This is true always. How do we get to Discord? Does anyone remember?
Discord.io /C4 podcast.
Bingo. You got it. Look at that, Anna.
That was off the dome, guys.
Yeah. C4 Discord is found at discord.io /C4 podcast. One final note about next week's episode. You're going to see the letter E next to it in the Apple podcast app and or other podcasts.
Christopher.
I'm sorry. It got to the point where I'm like, I just can't edit this out.
Turning the air blue. That's what happens when our backs are turned.
So if you listen to our podcast and you have young kids around, earmuffs or just accept it.
You know what? But more power to those parents.
Yeah. But what final words of wisdom do you have for all of our listeners there, Matt?
Oh, man. Where to even start? I mean, look. I'm going to reserve full judgment on Jim Benning's body of work in the offseason until after it's over, but it's not looking good right now. Nothing more so than the Toffoli trade and losing him for the contract that he got. I mean, the Canucks traded Tyler Madden, a player who could have been on a cheap entry-level contract right now, and the second-round pick for 12 games of Tyler Toffoli. Granted, you didn't think you were getting only 12 games, but you had Tyler Toffoli right there. You could have re-signed him for 4 years, 4.2, no problem. And we would have been okay with the trade. But you didn't. And so it's like, where is the long-term vision on management's part? What's the plan? There just doesn't seem to be any semblance of a plan that's been well thought out. And it's getting increasingly frustrating. I'm right there with the rest of Canucks fans who are feeling that frustration. And let's just hope that Jim Benning can find a shrewd trader signing up his sleeve.
I think pessimistic Matt's back. Optimistic Matt was a one-season deal.
Yeah, and it happened to be a shortened season.
What final words do you have there, Anna?
Yeah, I would say that it's not any one deal that I'm frustrated about, because I honestly would have been quite happy with, or fine with Toffoli walking away, even for the trade we paid for him. If he was, signing a big contract and we hadn't let the rest of our free agents go and Troy Stecher go, I would have been okay, I understand, why he left. But it was just, the last straw. And him getting that reasonable contract just seems, to put it in perspective, honestly, once again, would be so pleased to be wrong and that there's a bigger plan out there and Jim is just tricking us all. Like, really hope I'm wrong about it. We'll be more than happy to eat crow if there are some steal deals there to finish the window.
Yeah. And you know what? I have to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what to look positively on right now. It is a tough spot. But to use those words that were so eloquently quoted to us earlier in this episode, those words of George Michael, you got to have faith, a faith, a faith. You got to have faith, the faith, the faith. So on behalf of Matt Lee at MattLee_61, Adam Forsyth at A460, myself, Chris at Lightforce, and the continuing to remain unfit to podcast and possibly a figment of everyone's imagination, Adam Owen Carter at AdamFOC, we're going to sign off this magical episode with those 2 words of "We out."